Many people will die if COVID-19 continues at the pace at which it's going. Our lives will keep on getting disrupted. Life will never get back to normal. The economy will collapse completely.
My name is Catherine Kyobutungi, and I'm the Executive Director of the African Population and Health Research Center.
We need a lot of people to take up the vaccine. And even though we don't do it for ourselves, we need to think about doing it for the people we love. I may get COVID and not be adversely affected, but I may give that COVID to my grandparent who ends up dying. So if you think about your loved ones, how the best way to protect them is to get vaccinated and also get them vaccinated. I think it's important for people to know that getting vaccinated is a choice. And I think governments should not try any moves to force people to get vaccinated. They would strongly encourage people to get vaccinated because without enough people getting vaccinated, no one wants to live a life where every so often you have to stay at home, you can't go out, you can't visit your parents, you can't do this, you can't go to school, everything. There will be restrictions, for the next 2 years if we don't get, if you don't get the transmission under control. And the only way that can happen is if people get vaccinated. The reason why we need to test this vaccine in African countries, part of it is to be sure that the vaccine will work because Africans generally have a different genetic makeup. Secondly, it is to be sure that it will work amongst people with conditions which are prevalent in sub-Saharan Africa. HIV, TB, the neglected tropical diseases. We want to know that there's high prevalence of malnutrition. Does the vaccine work the same in people who are underweight because they are malnourished? So if we don't do that, we'll never know. And the danger is that we find that the vaccine works in populations which are completely different from African populations, and the whole world is celebrating, and the day it comes to Africa, then we find there are issues, that it has maybe severe side effects in people who are HIV positive, or it doesn't work at all. So we cannot know that unless we test that. Now, in the 90s, Africa was also, especially during the HIV epidemic, there would be many trials which would be done. The trial would end, the drug would be manufactured, and it would be unaffordable for African populations. So the thing that concerns me most is that the vaccine will be there in every part of the world except Africa. And perhaps for us, we'll get it in 2022 or something like that, once the rest of the world has satisfied its demand and has vaccinated all its population. So I'm more concerned about whether we'll ever get a vaccine and when that will be. If COVID-19 has done one thing, it is really to alter the information landscape in the world. And all of a sudden, we are in a different pandemic of information, which has been called the infodemic. Information that was localized, things around the anti-vax movement. It was taking hold in Europe and the US, where, for instance, measles cases started going up because people don't want to vaccinate their children anymore. And so COVID-19 has been this magnet where all these things have come together. And all of a sudden, people who are in one space around anti-vax are now anti-COVID vaccine. People who are around outlandish theories or conspiracy theories, now they found the fertile ground. And so the vaccine is going to be a huge casualty of this disinformation or the infodemic. Trials are guided by what we call ethical principles. And one of those principles is what we call justice. And the principle of justice demands that the risks and benefits of any new innovation, whether it's a treatment, whether it's a vaccine, should be equally spread out across the population. It shouldn't be that some groups of people take the risk of the trial and then another group take the benefit. And as I've said earlier, that's what was happening with HIV. Trials in Africa, treatment in the US, or treatment in Europe. So that was why this principle of justice, the main aim of it is to protect vulnerable populations from being exploited. They take the risk of participating in trials, but then they don't get the benefit. And in the last decades, there have been so many investments in the regulatory environment for research and science in Africa. There have been huge investments in building capacity, in training, in infrastructure, in resources to make sure that the regulatory environment in Africa is strengthened. So what was 20 years ago, 25 years ago is not the same. The things which happened before, the community has learned from them, governments have learned from them, they've put in place all sorts of safeguards. I don't blame them for being afraid, but I think people need also to understand that the world has moved on and that There are scientists whose livelihoods and whose passion depends on doing good. The regulatory environment is very robust and very strict and very strong, and people should trust that the scientists will do the right thing for their own good, but also because the environment forces them to.